Bob, are you ready?
Hey, Tom, what are you doing there? That's our mouth.
Okay, we'll call a meeting in order of the Newman City Council and Newman Crozana Unified School District. Special joint meeting of Tuesday, August 30th, 2005. Please stand for the pledge and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow our heads. Thank you for allowing us to meet this evening and for having great relations between these two entities in the future. Amen. We have roll call, please.
Present.
Present. Present. Do you have roll call?
Yes. Roll call for us, myself, Ms. Milbauer, present, Mr. Caton,
Present.
Mr. Garcia.
Present.
Okay. I do need an approval of agenda motion. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're ready to go to information items and your call.
Okay, next is items from the public, non-agenda items. If anybody has anything they'd like to bring up that is not on the posted agenda, now would be the time. Seeing no one. Agenda items, when the item comes before us and you'd like to comment, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and try to keep your comments to under 3 minutes. Item 6 under joint meeting is update on item 8, update on adult ed senior center.
Okay, if I might, because we've got two different programs going here, I'm going to ask if I can do the update on the Healthy Start first, or the federal task force, and then do the adult ed right there, so that way they can switch back machines.
Sure.
And we work from there. Again, Maria Velasquez would have been here today to do this part of the presentation, since she's highly involved in the Healthy Start Family Resource Center piece, but she's had a death in the family, and thus turn it on. She's had a death in the family and will not be here today. But let me talk about the integration of health, social, economics, and employment opportunities, which is in essence our Family Resource Center project that we've been working with across here. We just recently received a $1 million grant for the next 3 years, but we're doing that in collaboration with both the Patterson Unified School District and also Center for Human Services. We will be providing, we're the lead agency in that, and we'll be providing services across the west side. So what we're intending to do with the Family Resource Center, our vision is to have community engagement, to have public-private partnerships, accessible, comprehensive, integrated family support. Now, we've been working with the city, and the city's been a collaborative partner of ours all the way through this. You know, either John or Mike or Mayor Fantasia have all been involved in the formation of this Family Resource Center, and also working on the structure for the future also, and they were part of getting this grant that we have currently now that we'll be working on for a while. The reason we wanted this Family Resource Center basically is so it would be an accessible, comprehensive, and integrated family support mechanism, you know, where the services are offered in a safe, comfortable, and accessible atmosphere, where staff has cultural connection, and family members and staff work together in a manner that is mutually respected. In essence, it's a community piece that we wanted to make sure that we had in there. We did this through 4 focus teams, the health team, an education team, an employment and training team, and a recreation team. Our ultimate goal is to take this into a federally funded task force that would then provide for all of those services within our community. Right now, we handle pretty much the education piece, but we need to expand ours. We're a growing community, and we wanted to make sure that we took our shot at this, meaning the district working in collaboration with the city to bring in those services to the community. The health issues focus team, we'll be working on substance abuse counseling and education, a marketing program that is targeted at youth in the community, Partners that are needed, of course, is the Golden Valley Health Center, and we've got that already in line. Department of Mental Health is already online. Center for Human Services is also there. And then all of the health service agencies and transportation are also online. And so we'll be working on those. Our education issues focus team, again, as I mentioned earlier, it'll be a learning centerpiece where parents and students, collaboration with adult education, collaboration with the recreation program in the community, our after-school programs, our new kinder roundup and pre-kinder academy. We had a 6-week academy this summer to prepare kids that were coming into kindergarten. It's very successful. We're ready to go. We didn't have to have the crying for the first week, all those little things that always happen at the beginning of the year. Kids were ready, they're in line, they're ready to go. They understand what their role is in the classroom and makes education start real quick. Also Head Start, we're partnering up with Head Start and spending time with them in regards to making sure that we have preparation for all our students, plus also have an educational program for their parents and family members also. Our employment and training issues focus team, that is our employment development. One of the things that we have out here is a high unemployment rate, and we want to make sure we work on the pieces of the puzzle that lead to a better served community. Transportation was a big issue at one time, and with the mayor's help and the council's help, we were able to get Brad to bring out their one is the START bus, and the other one is also the Dial-A-Ride, and we want to expand those services over the course of time. But going back to the slide, information readily accessible to residents of the West Side community. We have partnered with Stanislaw Connect at this point, and we have eight computers ready over at the Adult Ed Center that we presently have over by the district office, where community members can come in and access the web, access employment services, access any of the items that they need to over the 8 computers that were donated by Stanislaw Connect. We will also have information and referrals through our main Family Resource Center, where we have outreach workers, and we also have referral service desk help at that point. Our partners in this, of course, are the Central Valley Opportunity Center, where they provide the job training, Employment Development Department, EDD, which also will come out to the Family Resource Center in the near future to begin doing some counseling and also some services there. IHEs, our Institutes of Higher Education, we've partnered with MJC and also with UC Merced and Stanislaus State, trying to make sure that we have options for everyone. Vocational schools are also a tie-in with Central Valley Opportunity Center, plus the ones in the general area that MJC runs also. Job shadowing is a program that the high school's been running, where Rotary and the community have been providing for us opportunities for our youth to be able to get an idea of what a job really entails. Something that they thought might be an area that they like, sometimes is not. Of course, the favorite ones are going with PD and CHP because they get to ride the patrol car, but it's not always about that. And so this is our employment and training focus team as we work on providing for the community in those areas. Our recreation team is again working with the city and the Family Resource Center in collaboration, working on nutrition and exercise target centers. Our nutrition is going through our food service program, and our exercise through our educational programs, but then a combination of both going with our new nurse that we have on. I say new, although she's been with us a year now, and a local person, Bernice Arnett, who is really in the middle of a lot of things. She's on the Asthma Coalition. She's on a lot of different things that'll service this community. Parent trainings, again, we're going to be doing that either through our adult ed program, through some webcasting, and also just doing the programs at the Family Resource Center, which is currently located over on the Von Renner campus. If you look at our public-private partnerships, we need partners that are committed and invested in, and we have spent a lot of time doing that either through our own network or through the city's network as they brought people to the table. What these partners do for the center are they provide the glue and the linkage to all the services that we have, and it also provides a system that ensures all services are utilized effectively. You know, the Newman Family Resource Center, we have a marketing plan that we want to have for this, and we've been spending time with the federal task force. We are part of the president's initial communication with the state of California, in which we were directly named the Newman-Crozan Unified School District. So we attend all of their meetings, because if you want anything now, in your names, you have to be there. So we spend a lot of time in Fresno and Visalia and Sacramento, and one time in Modesto doing that. But our marketing plan for where we're going with this is basically going to be talking about heightening the general awareness to increase usage among all of Stanislaus County residents, mainly because we're on the west side now. I'm talking a little bit more about the network than I am about Newman proper, but we've been spending a lot of time out there working with the residents of Newman, as well as Patterson, Wesley, and Grayson and Bernalis. We also need to position the center as a workforce development leader. We've already gotten commitments from EDD, commitments from all the IHEs, as I mentioned earlier, to come to us, not always us going to them. And that's why we spent some time on this and kind of logging miles, trying to get money for this. And we finally, as I said, logged in that $1 million, and now it gives you a breathing room. And by that I mean it gives us now 3 years to write the next couple of grants that we want to get to continue to develop services here. That is one of the things that we want to sit down with the city and say, aside from what we're doing, do you see anything else that we need to go after? And at the same time, city, how can you jump on our wagon at this point and help us out with the networks that you have at this point? We also want to promote the center as a community resource, because that's basically what it's going to be. And I had meetings today with the women's center called The Haven. I had meetings with Citibank today because they have curriculum they want us to implement. And I'll have future meetings with other entities that are coming in to work with us. Our marketing goals, again, like I said, is just basically to sell this to anyone that's interested in funding this. And I mean, we've already got people. The thing is that we've got people that want to fund it on a loan basis, and you know, that's nice. But I'm not so much into a loan right now. I want to say we deserve this more than a loan, and so we're still pushing that envelope right now. And as soon as we get that commitment, we'll bring it back to you. The elements of our proposed marketing campaign, of course, we've got brochures, both for employers, job seekers, newsletters, advertising in yellow pages, newspapers. Our multimedia marketing plan would also be marketing video, computer disc of employer services. The one thing that I didn't put on there because it's come up since, and Mayor Fantasy has been there, is the new cable channel that's going to be coming up for use by us, and we'll be able to use that as a marketing strategy also, where we can provide for the community both education, city services, social services, whatever needs to be done at that point. So we'll be using that as soon as it comes online. Should be coming in soon. An idea of what it would look like, we kind of just did a simple drawing, and I forgot to get you a copy, but if you'll see it on the thing, basically what we thought we would need in a layout for us would be a help desk, of course, as you walk in. But the one thing, as we visited other centers, that we found that was probably the most helpful is right on the right-hand side there where it says child care. You know, when a parent comes in and needs assistance and resources and all that, the last thing they need is to have their child sitting there squirming next to them and stuff. And so what we saw with child care centers where they could have babysitting for the hour or the half hour or whatever time they were there, the parents needed to go out. And then we kind of laid it out as you know, a conference room, labor exchange center, interview rooms, business centers, youth centers, you know, and this is just, like I said, it's just a sample. We want to make sure that we provide space for everyone. Initially, we had talked about, as the property across the street is being redone, to maybe take a look at some space in there, but you know, I think we're going to have to take a look at it all the way around, because it's going to be a fairly large place that we're going to need for all of these things, all these services that we want to provide. The summary of our plan: to increase performance in the community, to you know, work towards service integration, you know, have principles, integration, universal access, and then of course connectivity through technology infrastructure that both the county, the district, and the city should be able to invest in and come up with a program that will be viable for the whole community. We're a growing community. We're at 7,000, 8,000 right now. I anticipate we'll probably be 12, 15 somewhere in the near future. And as you well know, as a city council, the better planned you are before it starts, the better services that you'll have. Trying to play catch up is never going to happen. We have a call for support. Basically, it's city, we want to work collaboratively with you. Community, we also want to work with you in regards to fulfilling the things that we need to do in this community, aside from education, because it all links up. The child that gets to school hungry, the child that gets to school without a background, without a resource, the child that gets to school in any form of that is not going to be a successful child, or it'll have a delay in it. And we want to make sure that we provide as much as we can for everybody in this community. And but it isn't a one-man show. This is going to be a collaborative that we need to work with you on. So that's our call for support for you. Any questions I can answer for you? I know it's kind of quick, but I know you have other things to work on and stuff. And like I said, I'm winging it because my presenter didn't show today. So.
You did a good job for winging it.
Thank you. Okay, my next piece now is moving to item number A, which is the Adult Ed Center site plan. We are currently at this point at DSA getting this approved. The building itself, we should be ready to go to bid probably sometime in December, and it's upside down. And then we will go to bid sometime during the rainy season and break ground as soon as the weather breaks on us, which will probably be sometime late February, early March or so. What you see in there are some larger rooms. If you look in the top right-hand corner of this item, you'll see a large room there that can be cordoned off into two smaller rooms. If you look to just slightly to that left of them, there's another room right there that can be cordoned off and into other rooms also, so that we can have as many activities as we can have. The very top of the drawing, those two little squares there, that's a kitchen and a storage container, of course, and then you have classrooms and offices up above with a small computer lab in there and a small library. And then we needed to have additional parking where it's located now. It's located over by the Head Start and the Healthy Start also. So you'll see some additional parking in there that we needed to fulfill that site. I know it's been a long time coming, and our apologies for that, but sometimes things get in the way. DSA for one, and a few other architects sometimes, and so on and so forth. But we're ready to go now. It's like I said, the work's in the process. We have the funding available from the bond that we passed back in 2000, and we will move as soon as, like I said, the weather breaks.
There's a scale at the bottom, but how large a building is that?
It's about 5,000 square feet, and we wanted to have they're not curtains, they're fold-outs. That will shut those rooms out and make them larger or make them smaller, either way, however you want to configure those. We also initially will be using this building as our Family Resource Network Center, as we find the funding for an additional building to house that. And we've had some preliminary conversations with both John and with Mayor Fantasia regarding the property over on Prince, and the probability of us maybe sitting down with you and talking about maybe the utilization of that for a building that would house a family resource center there with all the employment services and all that. I mean, that's a work in progress. We'll be talking on that as soon as we get time. So, questions I can answer for you?
Questions?
Mr. Reed?
Yes, Dave Reed, 1541 Kern Street. I thought someone else would come up with this, but where's it mentioned senior center? I don't
Why,
see anything.
why is it senior center? This is not solely for seniors, Mr. Reed.
It was a slash senior center or slash adult ed senior center.
Mr.
I
Reed,
know
did-
we discussed this when I was at one of your meetings. And I was told that there was nothing on your papers that mentioned a senior center. However, it was sold, particularly the seniors, to vote for your bond issue to be a senior center. We had a committee. You were on the committee. We went around to the other senior centers around the area and looked at them. And
As
all
I
of a
men-
sudden, it isn't a senior center.
And
I'd
as
like
I
to know
men-
why.
As I mentioned, Mr. Reed, to you in our conversation before, you know, this is a community center housed on an educational facility that'll be used as an adult education center, which, if I'm not mistaken, seniors are adults. And so it'll be available for all of that. Now, in that same meeting, you said to me that you didn't think the 50/50 Club would even come over there because they were so satisfied with the one that
I
they
don't-
had over at the other place. But,
I don't
but
know
you know
that.
what? It is going to
But
be
even
open.
at that, the whole idea was, and like these other senior centers we looked at, was a drop-in place. If you wanted to come in and sit and watch television, you wanted to do this, do that, it was available. You wanted to have a meeting there, you could have a meeting there.
And that's still
And
available.
I think we would have sold down the river on it.
You know,
That's
everyone's
all I have to
entitled
say at the
their
present
opinion,
time.
Mr.
Thank
Reed.
you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions that I could answer for you? Let me just follow up.
Roberto.
This is a community center. This is also like any facility that the city owns or the district owns. Facility use permit or form for use of that is always available for that. And I want to make sure I'm very clear with that it is not solely to be used for adult education or solely to be used for any one purpose.
The
Yes.
senior organizations, like any other community organization, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mr. Salinas, but any organization within town may request use of any of the school facilities if they wish to request that a certain time period each day be allocated to a particular organization. As long as the facility is used by the adult education center would not be a conflict of time and facility use. Any community organization, be they senior, be they young adults, or be they a youth organization, has the ability to reserve times and schedule their volunteers to be in and do what it is they want to do.
As is any building in the district that needs to be used, it's always under a use permit, you know, request. So, I mean, we've never said to anyone, you can't use our building because it's just going to sit there empty. I mean, there is a policy for that, and that we've always worked on that from there. You know, there's always been some confusion in regards to, you know, it was sold as a senior center. Well, you know what? If you look at all the bond data from way back when, nowhere on there does it say senior center. It was a derivative of a conversation that was had over and over again, and yes, it was going to be to provide services for senior citizens, but it was also to provide services for all citizens of this community, not just a select group at this point. So,
Well, let me explain something. I was on the council at the time, and it was sold as a senior center. That's what it was sold to, and that was the way we figured we'd get the senior people to come along and vote for the school bond. Because as we know, they're all on limited incomes, and you know they have to have a reason to vote for something like this. And I think that's what we did. I know I went out and I campaigned based on that, and I told that to people.
yeah. Well, Mr. Martino, it is not, you know, nowhere does it say that it's not going to be used, but whether it's semantic, if I wanted to change this to senior ed center or senior center, would that make a big difference? I don't think so.
I think
still
you
utilization of that building is still available for all the community.
You know, you'd have to ask the senior citizens in this town exactly what they felt, how they felt about when they were told that this was going to be a senior center for them. And like Mr. Reed said, that they'd be able to drop by and to be able to sit down and relax.
And that is available. That's why I said we've got a small library, a small computer lab in there. You know, there's an inference that I went into collusion to mislead people, and I'm sorry if that's the way people feel, but that's never been.
No, I don't think you did. I think I did. What I'm saying, if I went out and told them that the senior citizen center would be for them to use, you know, and I sold it to them.
And it's still there, Mr. Martin. I mean, you know, they'll still be able to use it. I mean, when we talk about a facility use permit, that means when you're going to have a group meeting, not when you want to do a drop-in, because the drop-in will be there at all times. So,
I think the board has made it clear in all the meetings I've been in, and when this discussion has come up, that be it called an adult ed center, adult senior center, the board's made it clear that it's not going to be used specifically for educational purposes for classes. We're not going to put classes from the high school, junior high, are not going to utilize that facility. The intended use is what it is, and if seniors want to use that, the board has made it clear that they would simply have priority to use that, and call it what you want, it's still going to be available for seniors to be used. And I think the board has made that clear to the administration of our school district. That is priority, and I don't really think it's going to be an issue.
I just have one question, Mr. Martinez. Was it at any time inferred by anyone that it would be there for the exclusive use of the seniors?
No, that's not what I'm saying, but it was titled a senior center. So what I'm saying to you is that that's what it was sold as, a senior center. And I think Mr. Charles Marquez, who was also on the council at the time, can tell you exactly the same thing. That's how it was sold to us. And the whole idea, of course, was we wanted to get the senior citizens to vote for the school bond because we know how important it is. And I always know that school bonds are always important, but sometimes it's difficult for people to justify voting for something knowing that they have to make a sacrifice. And their sacrifice may be medical care and drug care and things like that versus paying for a school bond. So I'm saying they have to have a reason to come along. That's all I'm saying. And I'm saying it originally was sold as a senior center. And that's the way I sold it to the general public out there.
I believe on the actual ballot, it was listed, and in the literature that went out with everybody's ballot information, it was listed as an adult education center. There was no mention of senior on that. Now, in newspapers and in conversations amongst committee members and amongst themselves, it more than likely probably was referred to as a senior citizen. But in any ballot information that went out and any information that the Newman Crows Landing Unified School District put out, it was referred to as an adult education. Seniors are going to be invited to come to whatever internet classes are held there, whatever cooking classes are held there. In terms of a drop-in center, as long as the time has been reserved that there are specific hours for the drop-in, as Mr. Salinas has indicated, there is no problem with that. Any community group can reserve the time.
yeah,
So,
at the risk of
as a
sounding-
new resident of Newman, I have to say, I was here in time to qualify and vote for that, and I voted for an adult education facility. And I guess I'm a senior, and I have 2 senior parents living with me, and I guess I'm mystified by the issue.
Well, let me just, if I might, Mr.
Sure,
Salinas.
Charles, go ahead.
Since I was the mayor at the time when this entire issue came before the district, just as a clarification, because obviously we don't want to beat a dead horse here, because actually there is an agenda item on here with regards to the bond campaign. Basically, the issue was that it couldn't be called, and Mr. Salinas well remembers, that it couldn't legally be called a senior center because the controlling authority on the funds were the school district. I know in all the meetings that we had, clearly the intent of it was a senior center. I mean, that was clearly the intent. I don't think that anybody that was at those meetings will argue otherwise. I mean, I know we're sitting here talking about semantics of what it ultimately became, and you know, ultimately it's going to be on the school site. Ultimately, it's going to be the adult education center. But just for clarification, it certainly was supposed to be a senior center, but for the reason being that I said that the school district was the controlling authority of the funds, it couldn't legally be called a senior center. But I want to reiterate the fact, and remembering vividly those meetings, that it was the intent of everybody there that it was going to be, because a very key section of the community that we needed to have their support was the senior community. And I know that we were very emphatic about how we presented this measure to the residents of the school district. And I know it was clearly stated that it was going to be the primary use of seniors. Now, that's just for clarification, because I remember that very clearly, but it couldn't happen because of the school district's controlling authority. Now, having said that, you know, obviously, you know, it was made mention about the site on Prince Road, and, you know, that's the first that, you know, that's obviously going to be something that we're going to take a very serious look, because, you know, obviously we want to make sure they're all on the same page again. But having said that, I know that we're going to discuss this a little bit more when we get into the bond campaign, because obviously, as you know, Mr. Salinas, and, you know, and the board knows and the public knows, that there is a credibility issue when it comes to passing another bond before the voters, because quite frankly they feel like they didn't get something that they voted for last time. So there's certainly, as far as I'm concerned, a credibility issue there,
When
and
we
we'll
talk
need to
about
address
that in a
that.
minute,
Right,
I
when
have
we
to
get
deal
to
with
that.
one too,
Right,
Mayor,
okay.
or former mayor.
All right.
My name is Dwight Wilkins. I live at 646 Black Mountain Lane. Being a senior, and personally I could really care less whether it's a senior center or not. But my question is, having been around, having had kids in school and been around schools for years, the process of getting access to buildings that's located on schools, on school grounds, has always been an issue. Now, you're saying that whether or not it's a senior, like I said, I don't care, is the issue to me is this facility, if it's located on school grounds, really going to be open for anybody to drop in at any time during operating hours? And that's all I have to say.
Yes, it will be open during operating hours. You know, the access to facilities is always available, but it depends on the purpose too. You know, because there are certain things that a public building can be used for, and so those are the only limitations that I would see within that. Of course, hours of operation, as you mentioned, we couldn't do it at 2 or 3 in the morning, but we could do it at other times. So.
Any questions or comments on the adult ed / senior center? Seeing nothing, we'll move on to the update on the city general plan and development of the city.
Mayor, school board members, I think there's going to be a few minutes here while we pull up the map. What we want to just basically share with you tonight is the progress that is taking place with the Newman General Plan. Currently, we're about 6 months into an 18-month process. And what we are doing is looking at our existing general plan and updating it. We're updating the land use map, which will be pulled up shortly after they change over computers. But we're also looking at policies and goals and programs that are listed throughout our general plan. Now, most people who think about a general plan, you know, really all they look at is that map. There's a lot more to the general plan than just a land use map. It talks about public facilities, it talks about public safety, it talks about recreation. There's lots of different elements in the general plan that come together and form what is going to be our constitution for the general plan or for the development of our community. So with that, we have started this process, and we've been very diligent in inviting the community, inviting the school board, inviting everybody within our community to these public workshops. We've advertised, we've sent out mass mailings to every single person in town, trying to get as many people as we can. So far, we've had 2 public workshops, and we're now at the third and final public workshop, and that will transpire on September 10th at 9 a.m. at 901 Hoyer Road, which is Yellow Middle School, in the cafeteria there. It's going to be about a 2.5-hour program. What we're going to do at that meeting will be, at the first 2 workshops, we've identified opportunities, constraints within our community. We've also talked a lot about what people like about our community and what people would like to see fixed about our community and make better, and how we can make it better. With that, we did some land use maps. We took that land use map out, and we allowed people to make changes to it. What we did, though, we didn't give them a blank sheet. We took our existing general plan map and we broke it down, and we worked off of that instead of just starting from scratch. Myself, the council, and many of the community members think we have a very strong general plan, but again, it's 12 years old, and that's why we're updating it right now. So at this next general plan workshop, we're going to be reviewing approximately 8 to 10 issues that still remain unresolved within from the 2 workshops previous. Still working on the map, so. So we'll have workbooks, and those workbooks are going to be available online starting Friday. You can download them off the internet. We're going to print them out. We're going to have them at the counter at City Hall. Anybody can come down, pick up one of these workbooks ahead of time. They can fill it out themselves. They can answer the questions, or they can show up to the workshop and be guided through the process, be able to state their opinion, and also fill out the workbook and then turn it in. We'll consolidate all the workbooks that do come into us, and then we'll make some answers and make some recommendations to the steering committee. With that being, yes?
Are those only available in hard copy?
No, they're available on the internet. If you go to cityofnewman.com, on the bottom of the front page, there's a link that says for general plan information, click here. And then on the left-hand side, there's some icons, and the icon that says public input opportunities. Go to that icon and you'll see it there. There'll be a link that says public workshops. It'll be on Adobe, so you can download it and print it off and go that direction if people so desire. So here's our general plan map. This is our existing general plan map. Everything you see in yellow is planned for residential purpose. Now, not solely single family, because some of this is planned mixed residential, and planned mixed residential means, under our current general plan, it means 75% single family, 10% medium density, or 15% medium density, and 10% high density. So that's a whole mix of residential opportunities. We also have a requirement right now for specific plan requirements. If any of you attended any of the General Plan Steering Committee, I believe it was in May, there were a lot of developers that were allowed to come in and present their ideas for what they thought was the best and highest use of the property. And what you also saw before that meeting, though, was the planning manager from the city of Turlock who came. His name's Michael Cook, and this was an award-winning plan that the city of Turlock undertook in conjunction with their school board, the school district. The school district had a large tract of land over there that they were going to use for a high school. There was a lot of services over there, and the city of Turlock understood that that was probably going to be one of the next growth areas. Also seeing the need for a new high school, they worked together to form a whole master plan for that area. It's like 200 acres. So what they did is they planned the high school, but they set a whole neighborhood around the high school. And what that does is when you go to that level of planning, in this master planning process, and you set the schools in the middle, it allows parents to walk their kids to school. It allows kids to walk themselves to school. It provides recreational opportunities there. They also use some City of Turlock park funds and parkland to locate some facilities there. So they have a soccer complex there as well adjacent to it. So now we have this beautiful new high school in the setting of all these new homes where people can come out and recreate and just walk down there, and they're using dual purpose on the school facilities. Because the understanding is, school districts and school grounds are public property. They belong to the public just like parks do. So why not try to utilize that land as best we can and cooperate in its development? And that's what the city of Turlock did. And they worked with the school district again and did that master plan. So with that, one of the issues we'll be addressing at this next workshop is this master plan requirement. We currently have a specific plan or a master plan requirement which says landowners and or developers, whoever comes in, you need to plan this whole area. Don't just plan this little piece of property right here. You need to take in all this property. What our actual general plan says is you take in all of that, which is like 700 acres, which is probably too big to master plan. So we're going to look at what the appropriate size is. And what I would like to ask the school board and also members of the school staff is start thinking about how large you want your schools. That really plays a part. What is a neighborhood school? In the old days, neighborhood schools used to be about 600 people, and that's about 200 acres of houses. That's what we want to hear from the school board, and that's what we want to hear from staff. That's what we want to hear from the community. So we take that into consideration. So when we write this general plan and we talk about public facilities and we talk about schools and we talk about parks and all the things that this community wants and deserves, it's going to be in there. So then we can go back to the developer and say, okay, in this general area over here, we need a middle school and we need to size to about 600 to 800 people. And this is about the neighborhood it's going to serve. Down up here, we'll probably need a middle school. So you need to plan a community around a middle school. We won't go out in the general plan and tell you, okay, build a middle school right here on this corner of Barrington and Sherman Parkway. Because that's probably not the most appropriate way to plan communities. In the old days, the communities were planned, the schools were in the middle, and the neighborhood surrounded it. And that's what we want. We want the kids to be able to walk. You don't want to put it at an arterial road, which is like a boulevard, 2 boulevards. You don't want to put it in that corner. Now, some people may think, yeah, you can get to school easier. You can drive and drop people off. But then the kids have to cross those streets, and you're over in the corner, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's what we encourage the board and the staff to think about as we go through this process. And give us some input on that, and tell us what size of schools you guys think you want. But getting back into this master plan process, that's the direction that this community is taking, and that's what they're telling the General Plan Steering Committee. And we have General Plan Steering Committees up here tonight. We also have some in the audience, and that's what they're hearing. They want infrastructure up front. They want it done ahead of time, and that means schools as well. We want those facilities as well, but we want them to be master planned again for the whole community, for a whole neighborhood. With that, we want making sure that the city and the school district cooperatively and make sure that all these facilities are going to be paid for. The school district has a responsibility to go out and look at their facility fees and making sure they're collecting the right amount. And that's where the city comes in. When the school board does that, the city backs you and says, hey, look, you guys have done your studies. You know what your school fees need to be? Hey, we're going to collect them for you. We have the same thing. We collect capital facility fees for our sewer, for our water, for our traffic. We have to do studies to make sure we do those appropriately too. So that's how we can work cooperatively, and that's what smart planning is working together, making sure you have the studies done to tell you what size school you want, generally where you want it located. Can we co-locate parks and schools together to get the best bang for our buck, for not only for size, but operations, maintenance, those types of issues. Those are the issues that we're going to be dealing with in the future is, financial issues. How can we work cooperatively in making sure that we cover all this stuff and that we can finance all that stuff? Now, a lot of that can be done through landscape and lighting districts and a few other things. So with that, we have that workbook that I talked about that's going to be published this Friday. It'll be on the internet as well. I encourage, again, the school board, staff, the community, everybody to show up and make these. This is our plan. This is a 20-year plan for the community. As we see it right now, we don't see the sphere of influence probably changing. We're probably going to leave it as is. And what does that mean is our planning boundary is going to be expanded. This is that red line. And one of the questions is what do we do with that land out there? But all the urban uses are what's in the sphere of influence, and we really see that remaining the same. Under the current general plan build out of this general plan, it called for a community of about 25,000 people in there. And that's probably going to be what you'll see in this next general plan too. You'll probably see a few more policies, programs in place, to make sure that, like we talked about, facilities are there, don't let development outpace growth, or growth outpace the ability to provide public services, not only police and fire, but schools and the like. So with that, I can answer any questions that you may have right now, and if not, I'll just give you a brief update on where we're at in terms of current development within the community as well.
Question? I just have one question. At the current growth rate, when will we reach the capacity to build out the 25K?
That's a tricky question. It's kind of loaded, and let me tell you why. Because you can take it in a vacuum and say, okay, current growth rate under the last 2 years. The current growth rate in the last 2 years is significantly different than the growth rate over the last 10 years. When this general plan was started, I believe it was probably in the range of 5,500 to 6,000 people. Currently, we're about 9,200, and that's 12 years. So you did about 50% growth in 12 years, which is probably in the range of about 3% growth. With the current housing market, the way it's going, and all the lots and developments that were approved over 5 years ago, we're probably experiencing more. The state estimated that we grew at 9% last year. Will that continue? Well, I don't think so, because we have approximately 575 lots left, period. That's all the subdivisions that are out there. That doesn't mean someone can't go and put a house on an empty lot or something like that, but in terms of subdivided land that you've seen, like Hearthstone and Sherman Ranch, we have like 575 lots left. And that includes a high-density project that still has to go through the Planning Commission and City Council as well. So if you go into the current growth rate, that's probably about 2 to 3 years worth of growth. At that point, we're estimating that our population will probably be 11,500. So maybe by 2010, it'll probably be around that, 11.5.
Thank you. Any further questions for Michael? Thank you, Michael.
That was easy.
Update on our next item is update on the district's bond campaign.
Piggybacking on Mr. Holland's presentation. I have my safe space right.
Throw yourself out there. You'll be fine.
I got Mr. Parker over here, so it'll be fine. Piggybacking on Mr. Holland's comment on building a community that is for the citizens that are coming in, and for the growth and so on and so forth. The district has put itself in a situation based on the growth that's coming out that we're going to have to go back out to the citizenship and say, if you want to continue to have the quality schools that we are continuously having it right now, meaning scores that continue to rise, the quality of education is there, a staff that's committed to what's doing, we need to have the buildings and also, as Mike said in his presentation, strategically placed within the community. If not, if we can't come up with funding for it through the commitment of the community, we're going to wind up with the present schools that we have, probably as we had Von Renner at one time at 1,000 students or more, classrooms going from the present average of about 24 students to about 35, and so on and so forth. And I'm not trying to do scare tactics here. I'm just giving you realities of what it would look like if we don't go out there and do those kinds of things. The state of California does not have the funding or will not provide the funding for additional schools in this area or any area in the state of California. You know, you've got to go out and try to do it yourself. The days of after Prop 13, for those of you who remember it, have really been a point of contention with many school districts, many school administrators, many communities in regards to how they provide for. And I realize that the city also gets the impact from the state as far as reduction of fees here and there and funds that they would make available for you. So sometimes you've got to go out and do it yourself. You know, I could do a school with all relocatables and then, of course, incur the wrath of why do we have poor-looking schools and so on and so forth. So I think what the district is going for now in this new bond is to be able to fund, number one, funds that we need for remodeling some of our schools at this point, because the electrical systems and the roofs and all those are going by the wayside, and we need to address that. You know, people say, well, you get developer fees, but you know, the minuscule amount, you get about $6,500 per home, and that's not getting you anywhere in this day and age. And so we need commitment from other than the state, because if we rely on the state, we're never going to get there. Now, originally we had talked about doing a bond at about 15.5 because we had an elementary school that we're going to build over on the east side. But you know what? In taking a look at the way the structure of the state government is, I'm going to go after that funding on what's called a hardship application, which means that the district is overextended in its loan capacity, and we are in debt right now, probably the amount of our budget right now. Now, that's not to say that we're in dire straits. You know, in the 8 years that I've been here, we've kept this district in the black, and we will continue to keep this district in the black. But it's a matter of the services that we provide for kids, and so we're going to be going for a bond of 11.5, which will take care of refurbishing our electrical systems, our plumbing systems, and also our roofs, plus also pay back one of the high interest loans that we have at this point that we want to get out of the way so we can be effective in the way that we do business and stuff. So, and that is where we're going with a bond at this point. Questions I could answer for you.
How much do you expect it to cost upgrading the existing schools?
And that I couldn't tell. Like Mike said, that's a loaded question because I don't know what... We've got schools that are 45 years old right now, and that's my newest school. And during the last part of the school year, I lost a building because of the electrical system. It cost me $5,000 just to rerun that wires in there, and all we were talking about is one strand of wire from the box out to that building and stuff. So I really can't tell you what that's going to cost me.
For a bond issue, you say you don't know how much you need?
Well, I'm going to need 6.5 to do the work that I need to do for that. Right. So. Mr. Reed.
What's the percentage of your 11.5 million is there to actually new facilities, new schools?
Again, that's kind of an ambivalent question because, you know, we're not going to use any of that funding for new schools, but we are going to pay back a loan that we have to build new schools. So in a way, it's kind of like mirrors, if I could categorize it that way. Because we've got a line of credit right now for 6.4 million that we're trying to pay back at this point, rather than take it out of general fund. So in essence, the funding that we will not use to pay that will be money that we would then use for new buildings at this point. But on a hardship application, when you sit down and you qualify, you say to the state, you know, we don't have the funding right now or the avenues to go out and build a new school, because you also have what's called bonding capacity for a school district. We can't go beyond 15.5 is the most that we could go out to a community for a bond in this community, because the state sets its own limits at that point. So even if I had a school that I had to build at say 20 mil, I couldn't go after a bond to build it with the help of the community, because we've got regulations that we also have to sit there with. But if I go after on hardship, I can say to them, I don't have the money to build it, but I have the incurring growth that's coming. And I think one of the things, I'm not sure if Mike mentioned it or not, they're talking about 2,000 new homes, in essence, coming into that, the first part of that general plan. 2,000 new homes, if you load it at the conservative level that the state has at 0.7 per home, gives me about 1,400 students. So where am I going to put 1,400 students at this point in time? There's no place for them. So, and I realize it's a long, dragged out, depends as what is it, they call it, you know, if the demand is there, demand and supply, you know, and if people want to buy the houses, they'll buy the houses. So.
I thought you were talking about 575 homes still have everything we do right now.
Well, everything we have right now on the present general plan includes the Sherman Ranch, which is 450, Mike, I think, something like that. 430, somewhere right in there, and then whatever's left over at Hearthstone, and then after that, it's anything that's going to be within that general plan that they have there, which again would have to be an annexation, I would imagine, before that could incur, and again working with developers as to what that would look like. But in a general sense, given the land properties out there, you know, we calculated that it'd be somewhere around $2,000 as far as how many houses are out there. But I also have another, from what I understand, another 1,000 homes that are coming in at Diablo Grande, and that's also part of our district. So,
Mr. Salinas?
yes,
We
ma'am.
also have, as you said, the newest school is, other than the middle school, is 45 years old. And these schools that are that age and older do not have the American with Disabilities Act adequate ramps, restrooms, and those sort of things that are required now. If we do any kind of modernization on any of the buildings, we have to bring them up to the current standards. That includes wiring, plumbing, and ADA compatible. So those things alone can be quite expensive.
You know, I guess my closing comment would be, I've worked in this district now going on 14 years, and I think all of you understand my commitment to this district and this community, and this is not a sales job to you. It's that one way or another we need to get keep this district at the level that it is, and you know, there was a time, and let me toot my own horn, I guess, when I got here we were second to the bottom in scores and education in this county. Right now we're number one. And I think you need to take that to heart when we sit down and talk about what are the needs of this community, and it's taken the commitment of my staff and the commitment of this community to get us there. So it's not just me sitting here, because I don't do it all. You know, it's about my teachers, it's about my kids, it's about you working with us along the way. So other than that, thank you very much.
I just had a quick question, Mr. Salinas. With regard to the school bond campaign as well as the hardship application, did you say you're going to go for them simultaneously, or what's the?
Yes, we're going to do that simultaneously, but when you go for a hardship, there's only a six month window that you can do. So I've got to make sure that I've got funding for the other pieces of it before I can apply for the hardship. I've got the paperwork in the works right now for it, so it's just a matter of, you know, when and if I get this bond passed, that I then submit for the hardship right after that. Because what happens with a hardship application is that if you have any kind of funding that you have not committed toward an expense in the district, then the state can say, well, you know what, that chunk of money goes toward building that school, and I'd rather encumber as much of my budget as I can so that I can meet the needs of the district, and then at the same time apply for assistance from the state to build the school.
Right, and that was a question that I kind of wanted to clarify, because looking at both of those coming in simultaneously, now the state's going to look at your bond campaign and say, wait a minute here, you've got these additional funds. And specifically, and I know the question was asked, how much of it is actually going to go towards new facilities and how much of it is actually going to go towards non-new facilities, and whether or not that would be an issue with the state as well, to look at that and say, well, that's not going to.
No, the state looks at uncommitted money, and that's what they look at when they go after your funding. When you say to them, I've encumbered 11.5 toward this, then they cannot come in and take it from you. If I were to say, well, I passed the bond, but I'm not really ready to tell you what I'm going to be doing with it, then they can say, well, then that's free money that's just sitting there, and we'll take that. And so we will encumber, and that's why a bond is an issue that always dictates what you spend it on. And so it's the way that you can then sit down and tell the state where you've encumbered that funding. But I will have to go back into my other accounts that I have and encumber there for other issues that I need to have. So
What's the maximum amount of funds that we can apply for with the size of our district for hardship funds?
really, you can apply for any.
Oh.
You know, if you wanted to build a high school, but they're really going to question you if you go, because you know, a new high school is going to cost you, in our community, probably about $47 million, and the state's going to look at you and say, you know, you have 44 acres, you should be able to expand within your own site without having to go for that. But for an elementary, that's a whole setup, because we've got property for it already, and it's ready to go. So it's just a matter of making sure that we have the funding to begin construction on it.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and finally, as Michael, our community development director, alluded to, with the fact, now I know we've got these 500 and some odd houses on the books that are going to be coming in, but as you all know, until we have this general plan process done, I mean, I suspect that we're not going to be bringing in any more dirt into town, so I know that's going to provide some relief. But, you know, as Michael said, it's extremely important to have the school board and yourself, Mr. Salinas, on board to, you know, look at the types of facilities that we need. I mean, obviously, you know, there's going to be the growth in our community, you know, with this market especially, but I mean, you guys just need to be in the game early on and tell us what types of facilities you need. That way, when we're doing our long-term planning and everybody's on the same page, we're looking at operation issues, when we're looking at maintenance issues, I mean, we're going to be able to work together to be able to save some of those dollars. So it's,
yeah, I did send my plan in a couple of years ago. You know, it hasn't changed much. I've got 4 elementary schools and a middle school that I want to build in this community as the growth comes, and very logistically, it sits at every corner of the community the way Mr. Holland is planning it right now. So we've got the Barrington School that we've got out there. We've got one down where Mr. Lucas is proposing to build some housing there. I want to do one to the southwest of our President Junior High right now. I want to build one up above the high school. You know, I mean, because that's where, if you see the yellow, that's in essence where all the growth is going to be all the way around, and that's where I have that plan for. My next middle school would be almost about where you were pointing, you know, Barrington and Parkway, up in that area would be. That way I've got a middle school at either end of town. And the high school, we will just continue to expand it at this point. For those of you who have not had a chance to go out there, because there's a lot of dust yet, you will be very pleasantly surprised at the new outlook of that when we get finished with it. But it won't be finished in the next couple of months. It's going to take some time for us to finish that and give you a whole new look of what Oristema High School will look like. So, but I'll be at the September 10th meeting and share the sites with you, Mike, when I get it there. So, okay. Thank you, Mr. Krinkloff.
Question. As a citizen in Newman and a councilman in Newman, I understand having a city, having a school, we work together. But you touched on something else that I need some clarification on.
Sure.
We now have Diablo Grande in our school district. We're going to have a bond. They're going to grow. Explain to me, I'm not clear how that's going to come back and repay the bond that we're going to float. I'm sure it's on property valuation, but just run me through that. Not only what it's going to cost a citizen in Newman, what it's going to cost a rural property owner, and what it's going to cost people in Diablo Grande.
It's going to cost everybody, I won't say the same because everybody has different property values, but it'll be about $57.60 per $100,000 valuation of property and stuff. So whatever house is owned in Diablo Grande, they'll be paying the same thing as anybody in Newman or the rural area or in Crow's Landing. You know, anyone within our boundaries of the district, it would be $57.60 per 100,000 valuation for that. You know, now we do have when that, when Diablo was first built, there was never any, from what we heard, never any indication that we would get kids from there. I've got 24 kids coming from there right now. 5 of them haven't started yet because they won't start till Tuesday. I got 5 high schoolers there. We never thought we'd ever get elementary kids, let alone high school from there. From there, also Patterson picks up about 6 or 8, and because they go on inter-district transfers over there. From my understanding, there's a new set of homes being opened there from community members that I've talked to from up there, and they say that parents that are coming through there also have kids. So we expect another little burst of growth from there. There is, in the general plan for Diablo Grande, an elementary school scheduled in there. Of course, they haven't designated a site for us to sit down and talk to them about. Under their mitigation agreement, that doesn't come about until I think it's 1,200 homes. So we will begin talking to them about that also. But they pay whatever anyone else pays.
What they consider stage 2.
Right.
Which is long range, which is quite a ways out.
Mhm.
But what Mr. Slane said is Diablo Grande from the very beginning, before the project even started, told us that there'd be no students attending our schools from that location, that they would all be going to private schools. But as I said, we've got over 20 kids coming from there now.
Mr. Salinas, just a point of clarification. When you talk about the $57 to $60 per 100,000 evaluation, that is what the county has on the tax assessor's records, not what you could currently sell the home for.
Right, right.
And also those people who are currently moving into the very large, expensive homes up at Diablo Grande, because they're going to be valued basically at what they bought it for, are going to be paying percentage-wise a much greater amount than anybody who has lived in their home for quite a while.
Yeah, a point to be mentioned also is that the 5760 is based on the present population of the district. Every time a new home gets built, it impacts that 5760. In other words, it drops it. The original loan bond that we passed way back when started out at about $98 a 100,000 valuation. Right now, it's at about 74. So every time a new home gets built, it drops. And so over the course of time, we continue to grow. That 5760 will continue to drop as you go, and you'll see that on that.
Is that a mandated thing?
Yes. Yeah, because it goes by assessed valuation of the district, and it's called the AVU. They call, the more people you have to pay for 11.5, the less it is an impact on everyone.
So as you get new funds, you can't use them for new projects. You're paying down your old debt. So
Oh, not us. Not us. That means this is for the local community. Like, let's say for instance, in yours, and you've got 5750 because your house is worth 100,000, and then 100 homes get built. You could drop to 53, or I don't know the rate of drop on that. You could drop next year. You would be paying $53 instead of 5760, and then another group of homes gets built, and then you could go to 51. So your annual tax bill reduces every time the new homes are built in the community.
But that's mandated by the state
Yeah.
to do that?
Yeah, because it's a spread the, not to spread the wealth type thing. It's
debt
to
a
spread
lot
the
quicker
debt
than you
is what
get
it's called. So
Roberto, was $98 per 100K the original projection when the original bond was passed?
I
Was
think
it
it was the
higher than that?
original projection, and it wound up at 96.78 or somewhere right in there. Because by the time the bond was passed, then more homes have been built at that point. So
So the net wouldn't really be 5760 if you actually looked at it, the big picture, because the original bond has dropped from 98 to 74, and even though we're going after, we're going to be looking at about 5760 per 100K valuation. That really, we have to take into consideration the drop for the existing bond.
no, because you'll start at 5760 when this bond is passed, and then any homes built on top of that will then reduce at that point. It's not based on previous; it's based on future.
But on the original bond, I mean, the taxpayer needs to consider that they're not paying $98 a
No,
return.
not any
They're
longer.
actually paying
Well,
less.
I see what you're saying, yeah, that from the 90 to the 70 that we are now, that could be, in essence, what Mr. Garcia is saying. You could say, well, really, if you take that drop, you could take it off at 57, you know, because if you were still paying 98 even now, and then have to pay 57 on top of it, then it would compound the issue. But if you take a look at what has already dropped, you could say, well, really, that 57, if I'd have stayed at 98, is more like 37 or so.
So to understand that correctly, you're retiring that $75 or whatever that amount is right now. When if this bond were to pass, you'd retire that $75.
No,
You're paying
that's
the 57 in addition.
That's
to
a separate
75.
bond. There'd be two different issues that are out here.
But aren't you taking some of this bond money to retire that debt?
It's to retire
Out of
line
the new
credit.
one, we
Oh,
would.
that's a line of credit.
Yeah.
There's a higher interest line of credit currently that we're...
Yeah, it's not a bond debt. It's a.
Well, I guess,
So,
if I might,
sure.
Mr. Salinas, Roberto, for a point of clarification based on Mr. Crinklaw's question, then we'll be indebted by two bonds.
Right.
You'll be indebted by two bonds. And if I'm understanding correctly and listening to Mr. Caton's explanation of now the students there in Diablo Grande, because we are the larger populace, because we have the more homes, we're actually supplementing that area for their students to the district to an extent. Is that fair? Is that a fair?
That's really not a fair assessment of that, because they if you really look at the assessed valuation of their home,
Yeah.
is much higher than the assessed valuation here in Newman. So it might take two homes in Newman to make up one home of theirs. So it's really not a fair assessment. I mean, you get into apples and oranges when you look at that. So. But I think what Mr. Crinklaw was asking was the 6.2 that I was looking at, was that to pay back a part of the bond, and it's not. It's going back to pay a loan that we got, not a bond item. So.
And the advantage there is that it's a higher interest loan.
Right.
Right. So we would actually save in the long run on interest, which your interest charges right now will kill us.
Yeah. Mrs. Wardlaw?
All I was going to say, I guess the easiest way for the average person to look at it is remembering that the original bond in 2000 was approved by the voters, and they expected to pay $98 per 100,000. Okay, that has since dropped to 74. So if you add the 74 to even say 60, that's 134 per 100,000 valuation against the 98 that they were originally expecting to pay. So the increase for the second bond issue is much smaller than what they approved the first time, and will continue to drop as more homes are built up at Diablo Grande, if somebody starts building homes in Crow's Landing, or we add more developments to Newman itself. So looking at it, you're looking at, $134 per, approximately, per 100,000 valuation, knowing up front that as the areas build out more, that will also continue to drop.
I think,
I think, is that the easiest way to
Right.
look at it, I think?
I mean, going back, I was here at a time when the district was 1,300, and we stayed 1,300 forever. My high school was 300 students, and I thought we were huge. I would have loved to stay at that because it was a nice, quaint little town. But quaintness sometimes becomes attractive, and all of a sudden, you see what's happening to us now as we continue to grow. I've got a high school that's opening up a little over 700 now, and we'll just continue to grow as it comes along. So.
one thing though, let me just say this. I think we need to be very careful because, we're almost trying to justify, this additional bond by rationalizing the fact that, with all this new additional growth and just growth in Diablo Grande and these X amount of houses here, on one hand, we're talking about the impact that growth is having and the need to stay on top of our planning and everything else. But what I'm hearing in the next breath is the fact that but let's continue to have an unlimited amount of homes, because ultimately that will spread out the cost of the bond. So we need to be very careful on how we, you know, we approach the people by that, because, you know, that's kind of a, I don't know that you necessarily want to go down that road.
And it's a good point, Mr. Marquez, but you need to keep in mind that I've got a school, an elementary school that's maxed out now. Hunt is maxed. I cannot fill in, I can't put another kid in it. I've got a middle school that's maxed out, that I can't put another kid in there
And
also.
I understand what you're saying, though, but I
Right.
guess what I'm hearing, though, is the rationale of, let's pass this, it'll be spread out, but ultimately, when we get, it's what you were talking about before, we're continually chasing and chasing and chasing. So we've got these facilities, we go to the state for our hardship applications, we get this additional bond pass, we got what we need here, but then now we've got these additional 2,000 houses, and now we're saying, wow, there's all those funds that went to this, but now we're 5 or 10 years behind the game again, because we don't have enough developer fees to pay for the new facilities that are needed. So I'm just saying, when we go out to the public, that we need to be very careful on how we need to be very clear, and we alluded to it a few minutes ago, and I'm not going to go into it again, with the public hearing one thing and us stating something to them, and making sure that we're crystal clear on how we explain things to them, because here we are in 2005, 2006, you know, 5 years after that last bond was passed, and we're still sitting here talking about the semantics of a senior center / adult center, and where we went wrong or where we didn't go wrong, and I just don't want to see us go down that road again. I just don't want to see us, as you alluded to briefly, deal in smoke and mirrors. Let's just be very clear with the public. Let's just tell them what they're going to get, if they're going to pay down debt. We just need to be very clear with the public.
Well, and let me make one.
Was burnt one time already, and I don't think it's fair to them to feel like they've gotten the short end of the stick twice.
Right. Well, I don't want to go back into that area, because we'll sit here all night on that.
Right.
But let me talk about a comment that keeps coming up during our general plan. I've been to 3 of them now, and that is that the communities and their work with the developers is such that, or the council's work with the developers is just that. I think that's where we need to spend some time as the collaboration, and saying how are, between the two entities sitting at the table now, and the developers also coming to the table, is the entire group then going to provide for the needs of the community? And instead of saying, well, we need this or we need that, I think it's time to say, how can we put it together? And I think, you know, as Mike's saying, you need to have your future planned right from the beginning, rather than try to do it in piecemeal along the way.
And we'll have, we have the agenda item here, and as you all know, Mr. Salinas, we had very productive meetings in the past, when we had our city manager, we had yourself, we had 2 council members, we had 2 school board members, and we had regular meetings with our joint task force. We had regular meetings, we had very productive meetings, and, you know, ultimately, we were able to successfully pass a school bond based on our working together. And I would say, because it's been a long time in coming since we've had a joint meeting, I would say sooner rather than later that we start to hold joint meetings with those groups. You know, 2 members from the council, 2 members from the board, the superintendent, the city manager, and just press forward and take the bull by the horns on this planning, working with our staff and figuring out and taking your things that you have in place where you want your different facilities, and start pinpointing things and start, you know, getting the ball rolling on that sooner rather than later, especially now that we're going through this general plan process. After what's built out, we're going to have probably a 12 to 18 month window where, you know, we're going to let the smoke clear a little bit and then press forward. But I would say this 18 months is probably as crucial of a time as ever. So I would hope that that would happen sooner rather than later.
I would only like to add that keep in mind that the bond issue, as will be presented, is to address the needs of the students that are currently occupying desks.
I understand.
And the future growth will come through the general plan that is eventually put together, and whatever agreements can be worked out with developers. But the bond issue is for the warm bodies that currently sit in those desks every morning, eagerly and some not so eagerly, waiting to be educated. And they have very critical right now needs. We've had some handicapped students that we've actually had to build a restroom, and the only place to do it was clear across the campus, so that that one handicapped person who had a full-time attendant had a restroom for his use. We have other students. If you will remember, when all except the middle school were built, we did not educate disabled students with the general student population. They went to special schools. That is no longer the case. We have restrooms that somebody in a wheelchair couldn't get in if their life depended on it. We have facilities with no ramps for handicapped parents to go into a parent-teacher conference. Special arrangements must be made, that sort of thing. So we need to take these things into consideration. We've got roofs that leaked this last year with the horrendous rains that we had. We had buckets coming down in some classrooms that we had to go in and do emergency repairs on. We've had electrical things that we've had to go in and do emergency repairs on, and it's been piecemeal because we have not had the funds available to go in and do it properly and throughout the school areas that are old and need to be renovated, and do it in a time when it would not disturb the students in the classroom environment. So aside from the 6+ million that we want to retire the debt so that we have the general funds available to offer the students the curriculum that they deserve and the additional electives that make for a fine, well-rounded education that will get them into the college or vocational school of their choice when they graduate from this district, we need to make sure that they have a safe environment that meets code, that they can be proud of and have some spirit in. And that is what the bond issue would go for. As Mr. Salinas explained, the elementary school planned over by Barrington Park that we already own the property for, that will take care of the growth for the elementary over there. And that we feel pretty strongly we can get hardship funding for. Ceres just got hardship funding and is in the process of continuing to build and open 5 new schools because of the growth there and the impact on their budgets. That's what the state is there for with the hardship funding. Right now, we need to bring our schools up to meet the standards that are expected out of a school of today's world for the students that are currently sitting in those desks listening to the teachers. And we need to retire some debt so that we have the money available to add the programs that we need to give them, continue to give them the best education on the west side. And Mr. Beck can verify we have better scores than Gustine and Patterson. And as Mr. Salinas says, we have come a very, very long ways. We've got very innovative programs for our bilingual kids, for our special education and troubled kids, and we want to continue that fine program that we have. And if we are saddled with a lot of debt and facilities that need emergency repairs every time we turn around, we can't do it. Coupled with that, I don't know if anybody outside of the building industry is aware of it, but I think Mr. Nelson can probably verify what it costs now to buy steel and wood and plywood and drywall. It has gone up like 300% in the last couple of years.
If you can find it.
If you can find it. And with the building that's going on in Stanislaus County, then you have to go out and hunt for carpenters and electricians and plumbers. And since they are in high demand, their prices have gone up. So coupled all of that, it's been an interesting construction year.
And I think we're all aware of those issues, and I think that obviously the reason we all want to work together is so we can avoid some of the poor planning that we're all responsible for, the school district, the city, all of us. I mean, we're all responsible for some of the choices that we've made in the past, some poor choices that we're feeling the effects of now. Having said that, that's why I think it's important that we meet regularly
Right.
to address those issues.
Let me do just one point of clarification, because lest anyone thinks that hardship funds are limitless. You know, there's only a certain amount of money in the coffers that the state has for that, and the sooner you get to them, the more effective you'll be with them. So, but other than that, thank you very much. Oh, sure.
You had mentioned the fees set for developers, and I agree that we should get full funding from anywhere we can to play catch up and then plan for the future for the schools as well. But that $6,500 per home, who sets that fee? How is that determined, and how does that compare to other communities that are having the same amount of large growth in the valley as far as developer fees with what's here in Newman?
Yeah, that is set through an analysis of the district itself, and you do an analysis based on your population, on your assessed valuation, and then certain other factors that are in there, and that is set by there's what's called level 1 fees or statutory, and they're at 218 right now, Mike, something like that. Yeah, 221 right now, and then that's the statutory. In other words, but if you have increased growth, then you can go to what's called level 2 fee, and that is set within that study that is brought in. You do an annual study on that. There are also what's called level 3 fees, which in essence doubles your level 2. But that's the only way you can access level 3 fees is if the state runs out of money. In other words, if in their building programs they say we have no more money, then you can go to level 3s. I don't think I've ever seen a level 3 fee imposed anywhere, because the state usually keeps at least $1 in the coffers to say we still have some money in here. But there's also what's called mitigation agreements that we would love to sit and talk to our developers about mitigations and the impact. They're called impact fees, basically. And the district has gone into contract with a consultant that works on mitigation agreements, and we will begin that operation whenever we're ready to go with a new general plan and stuff. So, you're welcome.
Keeping in mind also, when we talk about hardship funds and everything, hardship funds are not automatic. It's competitive, you know, so the sooner we get our paperwork in, and the sooner we can show that we've encumbered all of our money, hopefully the better chances we are going to have to get those funds.
Yeah, we qualified for an interest-free loan, you know, but always keep in mind, loan is, you got to pay it back. You know, they offered us 4.55 mil, and at first we looked at it and say, you know, that's great, you know, I mean, no interest. But then you remember you got to pay for next 15 years. You got to pay 2.25 a year for that, 225,000 a year for that. It just compounds the situation. I mean, it can be attractive at once, and then all of a sudden say, but I still have to pay it back, you know, over the course of time. So,
Mr. Salinas, was there?
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, on the big school bond, I don't recall what the number was, where there was SB 50 language included in it, where there was a large school bond. Was there some restrictions, though, within that? Because I know in the SB 50 language it spoke to developer fees. Now, wasn't there some restrictions that were included in that bond passage a few years back?
Not in the one that we passed way back when in the SB 50, other than we needed to say we needed to specify what we were building within that. This new bond that we're working on is called the Prop 39 bond, and it would be a 55% passage, but you have to have a committee, an independent committee that would audit the process as it goes along. You know, whereas the current bond, which is a 2/3 majority bond, had no restrictions within it in regards to overseeing, let's put it that way. In other words, the district board was the one that made sure that all of the expenditures were there. But at the same time, you couldn't spend it for anything other than what you had designated it for. So.
Okay.
Yes, I just have a general comment here as an average citizen. I hope that none of you on here losing that this thing is not, it's going to be a very hard sell. Okay, but granted, with propositioning a few years ago, you know, we dropped the figures at $98. The economy was also a lot better then.
That's true.
You know, you have a rising health insurance. People now are watching every dollar. You know, so just keep that in mind with this bond. You know, I don't have any children, but I voted my husband, we voted yes on the bond because it helps the community. But, you know, we're thinking, gee, 30 years ago, this bond we voted for one, and now that, you know, the school district needs money again, so.
Yeah, well, you know, 5 years ago, we went for a bond thinking that we had kind of reached the peak of growth. And then all of a sudden it just continued on. And not only the growth, but as you said, the increased cost of homes. I mean, truthfully, I never thought I'd see a $300,000 home in Newman. You know, and like I said, I've worked here for 14 years, so, right. Mm-hmm. Right, I know.
Find out what you might want to buy.
That's true, huh? That's true. Any other questions, comments I could? Thank you very much again, and I echo the need for the meeting.
Thank you, Roberta. Last item on our agenda is set a twice yearly schedule for City School District Committee. I think we should meet every quarter personally. I think I'm on that committee, and are you on that, Mike? Representing, is it on that, or Bob is?
I'm on.
I can't remember. Me and you, Bob? And I know the board has an election coming up, so probably you'll have to wait till that's over to decide who's going to be your two representatives, but I would sure like to meet quarterly to discuss issues, especially since we're in our general plan and all these things are happening.
You know, Mayor Fantasio, since even though we've got an election coming, we do have a general plan meeting that's coming up. I would hope that you would meet, even though, you know, one of my members will be going off, that you'd meet still before that election or right in that area.
Sure, we could do that. If you know your designees, sure, I'd love to meet right before.
I'll designate them right now.
Usually appoint somebody when they're not there, but.
Yeah.
No, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Are we talking about full board joint meetings or subcommittee?
Separate, subcommittee, two of each from each
John
board.
and I and whomever other staff members need to, depending on the issue.
Just so the question is asked, so will we be also trying to have full both sides meet on an annual basis, maybe just to make sure in the spirit of the collaborative spirit? Maybe?
Absolutely.
Maybe do that twice a year. Have that one two times a year.
I would say the subcommittee would meet quarterly. I think that'd be good, and if both entities would like to meet, as we are today, twice yearly, or if the need be, more is fine with me.
Well, I think because our meeting schedules are so different and so much time goes by, that's a lot of reasons why I think, because Charles and I talked about it quite a bit, about the subcommittees and meeting, and for different various reasons we failed to do that. I think it's important. I agree, you know, quarterly meeting as a subcommittee and meeting as a joint board and council is imperative, so we don't get back in the same rut of no talking and a lot of finger pointing. And even though I'm going off, I would think that two of our senior board members should be on that committee, and you don't have to wait till election, because a new member coming on, it's going to take them a year just to kind of learn the ropes. So it would do no good for a new member to sit on this committee, I think.
Well, it'd be unfair.
It would be. It would be. It would totally be unfair. You know, I mean, they're going to learn just all the acronyms more than anything else, you know. So I think two senior board members should sit on that panel with two council members and meet on a regular basis.
I would definitely agree with that, with what Ed said. The more collaboration we can get between the school board and the city council, the easier our lives will be for us and for the community this time forward. And I would also agree that it would probably be two existing school board members that would be on the subcommittee. As somebody who's only been on the school board 2 years, I can tell you that first year is spent learning the acronyms of the education system and everything about the Brown Act and the Williams Act and several other things. So their slate is going to be full for at least the first year, and whoever joins our board. So Mr. Salinas, I think, has already talked to at least one or two of us about who would be willing to do that.
Well, can we move forward on that and identify? Because the reason being, we have Mr. Martina and our mayor, And if you guys can identify your two, then we can move on it, because I think the subtleties that we go through sometimes politically, you know, the niceties, let's just do it. And I get like that. So let's identify the two school board members, we have the two council persons, and then we know staff will be working with you, so.
Okay, Roberta, who did you designate?
And I always thought that was the other way around myself.
That's a perfect.
My two construction ladies, because they know what's going on, we're allowed to know about, would represent the board.
You okay with that, or?
We have volunteered already, so.
So there you have
not
it.
a surprise.
There we go. There's
Okay.
a task force for you.
That's great. We'll organize our first meeting after the Fall Festival. How's that?
Oh, can't we work in one more thing this week?
Can't do it.
Well, and the thing too on those school task force meetings, just from experience in the past, I mean, to just say 3 months is a hard and fast rule, it's fine, but I know in the past when we had regular meetings, it seemed like on developer fees and we were meeting with the development community, so, you know, as needed. I mean, I know 3 months to write down, but, you know, when there's pressing issues like that, especially now with the general plan, when everybody's needing to come to the table, especially on school facilities, that, you know, maybe not necessarily stick to the 3 months, but more as needed, especially now.
If I might suggest, maybe John can sit with council and come up with some dates and on a calendar, because I don't think all of us have calendars with us today, and I can do the same thing with my school board. And then we can bring back dates that are common and start working on both the quarterly meetings and also the joint meetings. And that way we get started on that, like Mayor Fantasia said, right after the Fall Festival, we can designate some days and begin on that. Because once you put it in your calendar, usually it's pretty steadfast, so.
And Roberto, I would like to suggest, I know as a board, we walk our schools, our campuses, and just so we have a feel of what's going on. I would suggest that even as council members, that you might want to set up with our staff, have either Mr. Carr or Mr. Salinas walk you through to show you what's gone on this summer at our school sites, as well as walking our new school, the middle school, so you have a feel of what's going on, and especially, and Mr. Salinas, you know, alluded to the Orisimba project this year, it's going to drastically change the way that school site looks, and I think for you to have a better understanding what we've done in terms of expending the funds for modernization projects and new buildings, I think it'd be a good education for you to go see what's been done this summer.
I can hear the hammering every day. With that, if there's nothing else from the public, we're going to have items from city council members and board members. I think we'll just start in the end there with Councilmember Parker.
Talk about meetings. My lateness to this meeting, I was at a STANCOG meeting, which is our Transportation Policy Board. We had a special meeting called to order at 6 o'clock. And I just wanted to make mention, because we get a significant amount of fundings in our town from STANCOG for our streetscaping, for instance, and CMAQ monies and LTF monies going along with those acronyms. But to fill in your potholes is the layman term. We have been aggressively pursuing the recruitment phase for a new executive director. However, out of this closed session meeting that we had this evening, there's no reportable information, but I just wanted to allude to that for my tardiness for this meeting. And then secondly, I'd like to commend staff and my colleagues, both the board and the council, for us having this joint meeting. It was long overdue, and I understand some of the reasoning for it. The school board is aggressively seeking the bond issue for all the reasons alluded to post haste. And I would just say to that end that we have a direct impact on the growth. There's no question about that. The city council with housing, things that come before us, and how the city has grown has impacted the schools tremendously. And we bear that responsibility. I think that has been alluded to. But there's a shared responsibility. There's a shared responsibility to put monies into action. There's a shared responsibility to do what you say that you're going to do. And I think that this is a very positive step forward, and I'm glad to see it. And I'm glad that we're taking action with the joint task force committee and for us to have additional meetings along this line, because I think you, Mr. Salinas, you alluded to the quaintness of our town and when it was much smaller. I still think we still have that intact. The integrity of that is still here. And I was once asked, I was posed a question of what I thought a small town was, and I said a population of around 12,000, and we'll be built out to that. How long we'll be able to hold that, keep that intact, no one knows specifically, but as long as I have a seat in the vote here, I'll have a big idea. And so I just wanted to express that, and thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Bob? I'd just like to say how important these meetings are. You know, the most important thing we can do for our young people is have the best schools possible. And that's what it's all about. So what we're here for tonight is to make sure that the students have the opportunities to excel, and our schools are the best in this district.
They are.
And continue to be.
Okay.
Ed? Nothing? Diane? Robert?
I just wanted to say I'm thankful for today's meeting and giving us the opportunity to establish a platform. And I wanted to thank everybody for their comments, including the council members and the public, because I think it's important that we have everybody's input. And it's gonna take us all. It's gonna take everybody here and everybody in the audience and everybody that we pass the word on to in order to keep Newman, you know, the ideal Newman that we all know and love. That's all I have to say.
Charles? Mike? Judith?
I would also like to reiterate what the former speaker said about, I am really excited that we had this joint meeting tonight. We were able to get some things discussed and some future plans laid for joint meetings and subcommittees, and that is what we have been wanting and hoping for and planning for as a school board for some time. And I know Mr. Salinas has had many conversations with Mr. Fantasia and with Mr. French to that effect. We do need to work together, because our best and most important resource as a country, a state, a county, a community is our youth. There are police, there are doctors, they are going to be our paramedics, our commercial airline pilots, if you will. Everything that we all take for granted right now, they're going to build our next car. That's all in the youth, and I know that sometimes seems scary, but if we provide the facilities and the education they need, it will work. So I'm really, really looking forward to it, and I invite anybody in the community, when we're having a back-to-school night or an open house at the schools, come join us. Come see what is going on at the schools. And even once Orstema High School opens, when you walk into the existing classrooms that were modernized over the summer, they may look similar on the outside, but they look totally different inside. They are bright, they are carpeted, they've got brand new air conditioning systems. They are just the kind of classrooms that you as a kid wanted to be in if you had to be there. And these kids are going to be really excited when they show up for school Tuesday and see what their new classrooms look like. I've walked through the new ones that are being built, the new computer labs and the new earth science lab and the biology lab. Oh, they are going to be fabulous. And the new multi-use room at Orstema is, you can't tell from the street, but when you get into the open quad area, it's going to be great. Over at the middle school, we've got the new library that has opened. We've got the gymnasium that will be completed in early October, and it is going to be fabulous. So come visit us. We invite you to come to our open house, our book fair nights. Come see what we're doing out there. I think you'll be very pleased, and I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. I just want to apologize for not being more engaging at this meeting, but obviously it's Fall Festival week. Half of my mind is over here and the other half is over here also. 30, 40 calls a day calling back, questions, comments. Just wanted to say that I'm committed to having these meetings, keeping the relations going with the subcommittees and with the full board. And as far as the bond issue, I am undecided which way I will go. I think I need more education myself. And as a young lady said in the audience, I have no children either, and I voted for the bond last time. But as all of you probably experience as I do, when you go to the grocery store to pick up a loaf of bread and you're in there for an hour and you're hearing comments from the public, the number one thing is the bond issue that people are talking to me about. And I haven't heard good responses from the public at this point. So I think it's going to be an uphill battle. As you mentioned, tough sell. So we'll see what happens with that. And like I say, I'm uncommitted myself one way or another. But with that, thank everybody for meeting this evening and for the public coming out. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
For the school board portion, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.